Say now that it's a pleasure to introduce a leader in the fight for working families, a leader in the fight for social justice, an incredible friend of the communication workers of America, Senator Tom Harkin from Iowa.
Thank you, Larry. All right. Now, thank you very much. Thank you, Larry. Thank you all. Thank you all very much. Thank you. That's what I call a great way to start a day.
That's right.
Can I go out and come in again? Well, first of all, thank you very much. I want to thank my Iowa members, my escort committee, for their warm reception, for escorting me in here, but more than that, for their many years of friendship. Steve Abbott and Carrie Bowen and Judy Fries and Francis Junta, Ken Murtis, Scott Renshire, and Kevin Kelly, and all the rest of my fellow Iowans and Midwesterners who are here. Thank you, Larry Cohen, for that very kind introduction, but more than that, thank you for who you are, and thank you for what you're doing, not only to lead this great union, but for what you're doing for working people all over this country. You've been a great friend. It seems like you're everywhere, at the White House, on the Hill, speaking at major conferences. You know, we have an expression in Congress. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Well, let me tell you, Larry Cohen is always at the table. He is my champion in our fight for EFCA. He's our anchor, my Rock of Gibraltar, in standing up for workers' rights all over this country and for getting EFCA through the Congress. So when Larry Cohen's at the table, that means the brothers and sisters of this great union are also at the table. And that's a good thing for America. And I want to thank all of the CWA members all over America for all of your help and your support for me and all my endeavors, going clear back to the time I first ran for the House of Representatives in 1975. Well, I ran once before and lost, but we won't talk about that one. But you were there with me in the beginning, and you've always stood by my side. I remember Don Rowan, who was our state director at that time, and is now retired and still a good friend. I've just always, Kenny Raines, these names are people that have now retired. But I just want you to know that I've had a very close affinity with the brothers and sisters of the CWA since 1974 when I first ran for Congress, and I thank you for all of your help and support. I want you to know that I'm proud. I come from one of those right-to-work-for-less states. And I'm proud that in my 35 years here in both the House of Representatives for 10 years and now for 25, going on 26 years in the United States Senate, I'm proud of my lifetime record of 93% voting for organized labor in the United States Congress. Well, now I want to assure you I'm not being paid a dime for this speech. I say that because you may have seen that our old friend, George W. Bush, I know we'd like to forget, but he's on the lecture circuit for a reported $150,000 a speech, and no press are allowed there. Actually, I found out, Larry, it's $150,000 a speech and an extra $25,000 if you want to throw your shoes at him. So, by the way, I know you're looking forward to hearing from my longtime friend and former colleague in the Senate, Vice President Joe Biden, later this morning. We've all known Joe for many years. I've got some advice. If, in fact, you're paying for his speech, don't let him charge you by the word, okay? Don't tell him I said that, all right. Well, I welcome you all to Washington. I look forward to seeing you up on the Hill later today, and I guess tomorrow, right? Today and tomorrow. Well, for those of you who have been here to Washington before, let me tell you something. It may look like the same Washington, but it's not. And of course, the biggest change is that we have a dynamic, smart, hard-charging, progressive president, a president who understands working people and believes in organized labor. Now that's a change we can believe in. And isn't it great to have a Department of Labor that is actually pro-labor, pro-organizing, pro-worker rights? To coin a phrase that's never been used before, that's a change we can believe in. Now, all of these things, plus your energetic lobbying later today, give me confidence that we are going to do one of the single most important things we can do to get America on the road to recovery, and that is passing the Employee Free Choice Act this year. God, I'm sure glad you agree. All right. Last November, when I was reelected to my 5th term in the United States Senate, I came back to Washington. I got a phone call from my chairman, Senator Kennedy. And he said, look, we've got a big battle on the Employee Free Choice Act coming up. And he asked me, he said, because of his illness and his recovery. And by the way, I want you to know that we're in touch with him. We talk with him about every week. He's doing well. He's feeling great. And we hope to have him back in July when we pass health care reform for all the people of America. So Teddy called me up and asked me if I would take on the job of shepherding the Employee Free Choice Act through the Senate. And I said, not only would I do it, I welcome it, I want to do it, this is something I believe in. Now, we all know and I'll get more to that later. Now, we know the U.S. Chamber is spending millions of dollars to defeat the bill. That's true. We got a real fight on our hands. But this is one fight that we have to win. When nearly 60% of workers want to join a union, but only 7% are in one, something's broken. When the average CEO makes 400 times what the average worker makes, something is broken. When ordinary workers have their retirement plans cut back, but executives get their gold-plated pensions, something's broken. Now, how do we get in this fix? Well, we got here because workers' rights over the last 20, 30 years have been systematically undermined. Even the most brazen union-busting tactics, threats, harassments, firings are tolerated or punished with just a mild slap on the wrist. Kate Bronfenbrenner, that's a name, Kate Bronfenbrenner, is a professor at Cornell University. She studied a random sample of 1,000 union elections over the last 5 years. She found that in 34% of those elections, companies fired employees for union activity. In 57% of the elections, employers threatened to shut down all or part of their facilities. In 54%, supervisors met with workers one-on-one to threaten them with reprisals if they supported a union. And she found that even when employees succeeded in forming a union, nearly half of the employers simply refused to negotiate a first contract in good faith. Well, I've got a question. Why should decent, law-abiding American citizens have to crawl across broken glass, go through some kind of boot camp hell in order to join a perfectly legal organization and exercise their constitutional rights? Now, I don't come by this from reading books. You know, I wasn't born with a suit and tie on. And I wasn't born with the name Senator either. I was born with another name. My name's Tom. It's not Senator or Congressman. So for me, this goes way back. Way back. My father was a coal miner in Iowa. Now, a lot of you probably don't know Iowa had coal mines. At one time, Iowa was the third most coal-producing state in the nation. So my father worked for over 20 years in the coal mines. But that was before the United Mine Workers. Now, he was an Irishman. He didn't get married until quite later in life. He was one of those Irishmen that believed that wakes and funerals were joyous occasions to be frequented often, but marriage avoided as all possible costs. Any of you are. So anyway, my father was 54 when I was born. And so I remembered growing up and listening to him talk about the years of working in the mines and what happened to them when they tried to organize the mines. Now, a lot of you may not know that the great mine leader, John L. Lewis, came from Iowa. Now, that little tidbit of information will win you a free beer at any bar with United Mine Workers. They all think he came from West Virginia or Pennsylvania. Sorry about that, but he came from Iowa. But my father used to tell me about those stories and what happened to them. He said that the best thing that would happen is you just got run out of town. He said usually you got the hell beat out of you, and then you got run out of town. And so he told me about all those stories and the struggle for their rights and what they went through in those early days. Well, I thought to myself, well, you know, those are the old days, right? Those are the old days. And then something else happened to me. Now, Larry mentioned my brother Frank, and I tell this story. As I go around and I talk to working people in Iowa and around the country, I hear good personal stories about what happens to people. And here's my personal story. Let me tell it to you. I had this brother Frank, my older brother. He got a job working in a manufacturing facility in West Des Moines, Iowa. Now, my Iowans will know, remember Delavan Manufacturing. In the 1950s, they were organized. Even in the early 50s, they were organized by the UAW. He joined the union, became a proud union member. He worked at a milling press, drilling little holes in jet engine nozzles. I can remember one time I came home, I was a jet pilot in the Navy, and I came home from overseas for Christmas one time, and my brother Frank, I found that the nozzles that were made for the F4 Phantom engines, the GE engines, came from Delavan's. He was actually making those nozzles, and I'm flying the jets. He was very proud of that, proud that he was doing something to defend his country. He had a good job, health care, pension rights, good wages, good strong union. In 23 years of working there, they never had one labor strife. Not one. Not one work stoppage. Not one strike. Old man Delavan, who owned the company, met with them on their contract. They would negotiate, sign the contract, move on. After 23 years, Mr. Delavan sold the company. And he sold it to a group of investors. Now, you're getting the picture now, right? I think you're way ahead of me on this one. Sold to a group of investors, one of whom bragged, and I still have the newspapers, bragged in the Des Moines Register, if you want to see how to get rid of a union, come to Delavan. So these investors took it over. When the contract was up, they refused to negotiate in good faith. Union did the only thing that it could do, and that was go out on strike. And then they did something I'd never heard about before. They brought in replacement workers. We know them by another name, don't we? We call them scabs. To replace these workers. And it was a mean strike. Here were people that had worked there for 20, 30 years, 25. My brother had been there 23 years. And all of a sudden their jobs are being taken by scabs. And they have no legal right to do anything. The strike went on for a year, and you know what happens under labor law. After 1 year, they voted to decertify the union. They decertified the union. So my brother's out of a job. Now, the one thing I didn't tell you about my brother Frank, which is most important, is that my brother was disabled. He was deaf all his life, couldn't hear. At a young age, he was taken away from our home, sent across Iowa to Council Bluffs to the Iowa School for the Deaf. Actually, they called it the Iowa School for the Deaf and Dumb. My brother told me one time, he said, I may be deaf, but I'm not dumb. And when he went to school there, they taught him to be three things. They taught him he could be a baker, a printer's assistant, or a shoe cobbler. Well, he said he didn't want to be any of those things. Well, I said, okay, you're going to be a baker then. So he became a baker. He didn't want to do that, and finally he got this wonderful job at Delavan. It's a wonderful job, operating a very intricate drilling press, making these nozzles for jet engines. He had a great job. Very proud of it. I remember one time, again, I came home from Christmas. It was the same time I'm talking about, and they had a Christmas party, and my brother was given a gold watch by Mr. Delavan because he'd worked there for 10 years, had never missed one day of work, and hadn't been late once in 10 years. In 23 years of working there, he only missed 5 days of work because of a blizzard one time. Now I ask you, my brother at that time, now 53 years old, where does a 53-year-old deaf man find a job? He got a job as a janitor in a shopping mall at night. Cleaning toilets. Nothing wrong with that work, but it was minimum wage, no benefits, no union, no pension, no health benefits, nothing. I was in Congress then. I'd just been elected to Congress. And my brother asked me, he said, how can this happen in America? How can they do this to me? How can they do this to my fellow workers? We have no rights. He said, I worked all my life, and now I'm a janitor. It broke his spirit. Until the day he died, he never forgot that. And I can tell you, I haven't forgotten it either. When I was in the House, we lost labor law reform, 1978. We passed it, and the House got killed in the Senate. Of course, I was kind of a new member of the House at the time. But then in 1994, we had the anti-striker replacement bill. Dick Gephardt, God bless him, got it passed in the House. We got it to the Senate. We got it through our committee. Howard Metzenbaum, God rest him. And I took it to the floor of the Senate. We lost it by 2 votes. 2 votes. I won't forget that either. And so when Ted Kennedy asked me to take over EFCA, I said, you bet. Let me sink my teeth into this one. We're not going to lose it. What's our goal? Restore some measure of balance and fairness for organizing labor unions. We start at the beginning. Why is it? Why is it that only the employer gets to decide whether unions have to go through an election or have a card check? Why should they be? Why shouldn't employees also have that right too? The same as employers. As your president, Larry, pointed out to me and keeps pointing out in our meetings, 46 other, I think it's 46.
Even more now.
How many more? I don't.
We're up to like 70.
70 nations now that have organized labor do it through card checks. But we don't. It seems to me that would be the American way. And I think that's what the Employee Free Choice Act is about. It's about the American way. It's about letting people decide for themselves what they want to do, isn't it? Not letting somebody else decide for you. That's the American way. You know, it's fashionable these days to quote Abraham Lincoln. So, I'll quote Abraham Lincoln. It has happened in all ages of the world, said Lincoln, that some have labored and others have, without labor, enjoyed a large proportion of its fruits. This is wrong and should not continue. To secure to each laborer the whole product of his labor, or as nearly as possible, is a most worthy object of any good government. Now that's my kind of Republican. Now I gotta tell you what's happened to that party. So we're in our meetings on our labor committee on health reform. It's a health and labor committee. We've been engaged in it yesterday all day long. Chris Dodd is now taken over for Senator Kennedy and running it. So yesterday, Senator Bob Casey from Pennsylvania, great senator, he spoke up and he said, we're talking about how we're going to pay for this. And a lot of the Republicans were talking about, we'll cut government spending here and cut this and cut that. Finally, Bob Casey said, well, what about all these tax breaks we gave to the rich over the last several years? All these tax breaks to the upper 1% and all that. Why can't we close some of that? Senator Enzi from Wyoming, who's a ranking member, kind of responded, and he said, what we have to remember is that it's the rich who create jobs, not the poor. So I wrote a note to Bob Casey, and I said, if that's the case, and we've given all these tax breaks to the rich over the last several years, how come we got so damn many unemployed in America today? Now, I'm sure you've been hearing the Chamber of Commerce folks are crowing they've killed EFCA. But again, to paraphrase Mark Twain, the reports of EFCA's death are greatly exaggerated. I'm here to tell you that EFCA is alive and kicking. Now, but I got to tell you, we need you on the Hill in full force. We need you in those offices. It's not 51 votes. Hell, I got 51 votes. I need 60 votes. Now, we got to wait till we get Mr. Franken from Minnesota here, and hopefully that's going to happen pretty soon. And I've been talking to senators who have expressed some reservations about the bill. I've been meeting with them one-on-one and in small groups. If I'm not mistaken, I believe some of them may be on your target list this afternoon for visits. And I just want you to know that your visits can make a real difference. I mean, we need you badly on the Hill, badly, because they're getting hit by the Chamber of Commerce and all that stuff in their states, and they need to hear from you. And you don't just represent the CWA. When you go to visit them, you represent all the working people in your various states, not just the CWA. You represent them all. I will say this. We always expect, no bill ever gets passed the way it starts out. So I kind of always expected we'd have to make a change here, a little bit there, that kind of stuff. But I want to be clear to all of my friends in organized labor, and especially the CWA. Here is my bottom line. We will maintain 3 core principles. Giving workers a real freedom to choose a union without harassment and without any threats. Number 1. Number 2, ensure that workers who organize will get a first contract. And providing meaningful penalties for repeated violations of workers' rights. Now, I'm hopeful that we can get a good compromise worked out that meets these fundamentals. But I have served notice, and I have the backing of our majority leader, Harry Reid. If we don't reach a compromise, if we can't reach a good compromise that is agreeable to organized labor, not the Chamber of Commerce, but to organized labor, if we can't reach that compromise, I will bring EFCA as it is out on the floor and demand an up or down vote so you and labor will know who your friends are. Well, so we need you on the Hill. Now again, I hope it doesn't come to that. I hope we can get people together to reach those necessary compromises. But to those who ask, can we really pass EFCA? Well, I've got 3 new words that you've never heard of before. Yes, we can. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your warm welcome. Thank you for all you're doing. We need you. We need you. We need you on the Hill at every office, fighting for EFCA. Never give up. Never give up. Never give up. Thank you.